Alright guys, I'm Chen. I've been playing poker since about 2013. Played full-time for like 3 or 4 years, then opened a restaurant in Toronto in 2019. So I haven't been playing as much as or studying as much as I would have typically if I was playing full-time. But I still grind a lot. I love tournaments. Most of the stuff we cover today is going to be based on tournaments and not cash. Just gonna touch on 3-betting, how I construct my 3-betting range, and then the strategy behind 3-betting in MTTs, and then the other one is ICM. I have a fun spot from a tournament I played yesterday actually, where it was like complete like fucking ICM hell for my stack because it was like the middle stack, but it was a super short stack final table with big pay jumps. And kind of let you see how your ranges change when you are playing in the ICM stage of the tournament versus early on in the tournament. So, should I get the clicker working?
Try again.
Okay. So, is everyone familiar with 3-betting? Just re-raising. A single bet is a 2-bet. This is a 3-bet. So first we can start with sizing. So sizing in position and out of position. Does anyone know the difference in your sizing if you're in position or out of position? No clue? So when you're in position, you want to size a little bit smaller. That's because you have a positional advantage, so you actually don't mind if they call. So when you're in position, you're going to be able to realize your equity a lot easier. So say you have ace high, you can show it down a lot easier, your weak showdown hands. And then you're also able to put a lot more pressure on your opponent by continue betting. So like in a tournament, like cash game and tournaments very different in sizings. Cash games, you're always 100 big blinds plus effective, so you always want to size up bigger. But in tournaments, when you're like 40 big blinds, 50 big blinds effective, you can actually size your 3-bets smaller and leverage their stacks with your 3-bets. So for example, like if I'm 3-betting someone from the button versus a cutoff open, like 40 big blinds effective, I want to go like 3x their 3-bet, which is like 6 big blinds. But if I'm 3-betting them from the small blind versus a button open, I want to size up to like 7.5, 8 big blinds because you have a little bit more fold equity, your bluffs get through a little bit more, and you're playing out of position, so it's really hard for you to like just blast away against like an uncapped range. So general rule, instead of memorizing a lot of charts to know what hands to 3-bet, is if your hand is too weak to call but also seems too strong to fold, you want to put those hands in your 3-betting range. So for example, button opens or cutoff opens on 30 big blinds. I have ace 9 offsuit. Ace 9 offsuit is not a flat there. Just doesn't do well enough, but it also seems too good to fold. So those are the hands I'll put in my 3-betting range. So MTTs at low stages or late stages of MTTs, you want to use blockers more than you want to use like suited connectors. So like the value of like suited connectors, 3-betting those in a cash game is because you're deeper, you can get in more big blinds once you make a good hand, or you can play your draws very aggressively. You have more fold equity when you play your draws aggressively in like 100, 200 big blind cash game. But in an MTT late stages, you really want to use like your suited King X. The solver loves like every suited ace X that's like a wheel. Basically, it's saying to 3-bet that at like 100% frequency versus like late position open.
What's MTT?
MTT is multi-table tournament.
Okay.
So tournaments versus cash games, essentially. So yeah, like late stages, like I want to use like my weak ace X, my suited ace X, my suited King X. King Queen is like the nut like bluff hand for blockers because you block ace king, ace queen, kings, and queens. Also like a 3-betting strategy from the big blind. So I typically use like a polar 3-betting strategy from the big blind. So I'm gonna 3-bet obviously like my really good hands, especially from a late position open. I'm gonna 3-bet like 9s plus to call off, like 35 big blinds effective. But I'm also gonna 3-bet like king 3 suited. Because I do have that blocker and it is on the edge of like almost being not good enough to call, so that's why I 3-bet. So basically I'm just 3-betting like the top of my range, and then like some poor hands that don't play that well if I defend, and then not 3-betting like my ace 10 off as much on like 30 big blinds, because you also still want to have like ace X in your defending range, but also like those hands you can keep in worse hands by just defending. Like for example, if you 3-bet ace 10, the button's gonna fold like ace 3, right? But if the button opens and you 3-bet shove ace 3 suited, they're gonna fold ace 7, ace 8. You know what I mean? So you're actually getting worse hands to fold, and you want to keep in worse hands when they call. So this is 3-betting range, 35 big blinds effective near the bubble. So cutoff opens 2 big blinds, button opens 6 big blinds. So everything in red is the hands that you want to 3-bet. So ace 6 off, ace 7 off, ace 8 off are all folds because they can't make a wheel. They're just too trash to continue. But then if you look, it's mixing in ace deuce off to 3-bet because it's definitely too bad to peel, but it has a lot of 3-bet value with the ace blocker. And it's pretty much telling you to 3-bet almost every combination of the suited ace X. The reason being, like I said before, is they're going to fold ace 9 off, ace 8 off if you 3-bet shove like ace 4 suited, ace 3 suited. So you're getting hands that dominate you to fold, which is really valuable. You're also clearing out a lot of hands that have really good equity against you. So like your weak ace X, pretty much like flipping, not flipping, but like 40% equity or like 60% equity against like your suited broadways and that kind of hands. So those hands are going to realize equity a little bit less than your broadways, but they're also much better to 3-bet versus the non-suited hands, just because they play a lot better when you have to see a flop.
In your graph there, so this, as an example, the pot of 4s, see how the call is like not even a portion of the square there?
Mm-hmm.
What's that all like?
So this is just saying that you should call 4s at like a 15% frequency.
Oh, okay.
The frequency I would choose to call 4s is if it's against a weak player. So if the player is not going to c-bet a lot, if they're just going to play face up and give up a lot, then that's when you want to mix in the calls. But generally speaking, you kind of just want to fold those hands.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then like as you see here, like the solver loves like king queen off and king jack off as 3-bet hands, just because it blocks so many really good hands.
I got a question about why would you call with ace jack suited but 3-bet with ace jack offsuit? Is it because
when you 3-bet, you want to have suited hands in your range, just because you want to, and like think about the theory that like you just want to put in more money the better the hand that you have. It's just the simplest theory. Good hand, bet more. Mm-hmm. So ace jack suited, but ace jack off.
Yeah, because ace jack suited is a better hand.
It is a better hand. You're right. So I would say that ace jack suited and ace 10 suited, they're also a lot easier to realize your equity. Ace jack off, there could be like boards that miss, but you can't show down ace high. But you're going to be able to continue a lot more with your suited hands on post flop. It plays better post flop. So like you can float. It's better to float a dry 10 high board with ace jack suited than ace jack off if you have a backdoor flush draw. Like basically solver hates when you fold with a backdoor flush draw.
Because your equity goes up, I guess. If
your equity goes up, but you also can bluff with your semi bluffs a lot more. Yeah, I just pulled up this chart this morning, but it seems pretty good. Like ace 10 off is like dicey-ish call, so like it wants you to 3-bet, and then like king 9 suited is like prefers the 3-bet because it's like almost too good to fold, but good enough to 3-bet.
Do you find the solver is relatively aggressive though, or no?
I think the solver is aggressive in ways that it wants you to do uncomfortable things that you're not used to sometimes. But the important thing is to not look directly at the solution the solver spits out, but to why the solver wants it like that. You know what I mean? So like people have like done the research to find out why like these lower ace X hands are better than 3-bet, and it's because they can get hands that dominate it to fold. Does anybody have questions?
I think the the suited stuff generally just has more playability. It's just good enough to like play a hand in position. So you kind of see it's like kind of like polarizing. It's like you're 3-betting with your best stuff, like your aces, kings, king, and then like a lot of the offsuit stuff is gonna kind of generally be bucketed into like that fringe that Chen was talking about, which is just like too, what is it? You said too good to
fold,
but like not big enough to just call.
Yeah.
So that's generally kind of what you'll see. But I think generally your suited hands are just the suited broadways generally you'll kind of see like they just have better playability, and you can be pretty comfortable just like flatting in position.
Yeah, you're gonna realize your equity with like king queen suited like all the time, and then the flop comes ace high, like you're not gonna lose much money either. So yeah, like they're just much easier to play, much easier to get value from worse hands, and be able to fold when you have the worse hand.
Are there like tricks that you've invented to remember where these borders are? Like, you know, it's like really harsh borders.
I mean, for me, like I'll just 3-bet like every suited ace.
Yeah.
From late position. That's like, but this is all depending on the opponent, right? Sometimes the guys are super out of line, so you want to 3-bet wider. If they're a little bit tighter, like they're not opening as wide, then you want to 3-bet a little bit more narrow range. But like I generally have like all these charts memorized to like 95% accurate. But then if I have a hand that's on the cusp, then that hand goes into the like mixing 3-bet range. Or a lot of it too is also like I want to say this too, like sometimes GTO just doesn't matter. It's just a good baseline. But if you want to be the best poker player you can, you're not playing GTO. You're just paying attention to everyone in the room and then adjusting from GTO based on how far they play off GTO. So if someone's overfolding like 20% more than they should, then you should just shove 20% more hands, if that makes sense. Do you guys know what ICM is? Anyone want to take a guess?
I don't know exactly what it is perfectly, but basically like how much your chips are worth in front of you when it comes to like when you're in the money. I guess. I don't know, but
so yeah, that's basically what ICM is. It's the value of your chips later on in a tournament when you're close to the money even. ICM kind of starts taking effect after like 50% of the field is gone. It doesn't change your ranges dramatically, but once it gets down to like 25% of the field left, and then especially on the money bubble, it changes your ranges dramatically. Does anyone know how it might change your range based on your stack size? So like say you have a small stack size.
Yeah, if you're small you get tighter, and if you're a bigger stack you probably become a loser.
So it's kind of true. So actually if you're a middle stack, you play tighter because you don't want to bust before the small stacks. If you're the big stack, you want to play looser. But if people aren't respecting ICM, then you're just going to cause like a bus crash basically of people just colliding, and that's also not very effective. So if the person you're playing against doesn't understand ICM at all, maybe you shouldn't shove as wide because they're just going to call you with a chip EV range, which is like significantly different than ICM range. So yeah, basically ICM is a mathematical model used to estimate the real money value of a player's chip stack based on the tournament's payout structure and the chip stacks of the remaining players. ICM stands for Independent Chip Model. It makes players make more informed decisions near the bubble, near pay jumps, and usually, like I said, it takes effect around when 50% of the field is eliminated and after late registration ends. So ICM is most important during pay jumps. Like final tables where the pay jumps are the biggest. There are certain spots, crazy spots. If you have like I've seen lately, people have been posting like if you have 50 big blinds, there's two guys with like 3 big blinds. If the big stack shoves on you, like your range is just like kings and aces. You should just fold queens. Risk premium is high, and then it just makes it so like basically if you lose to the big stack after he shoves, everyone benefits but you. So everyone else makes money, essentially. So we touched on before, how does ICM affect ranges? So if you're a super short stack, you actually have less ICM pressure because you need to double. You're not really like trying to wait it out because at the end of the day, you still have to win the tournament. But one thing the ICM doesn't take into account is future game. So future game is like your skill edge once you obtain that big stack. Some people are really good at playing the big stack, so it actually may be more beneficial for them to forget about ICM if it's a close spot to obtain that bigger stack, because they're going to win a much higher rate once they get that big stack. And the last thing on ICM I want to touch about is collision theory. Does anyone know what collision theory might mean? So collision theory is kind of what I touched on before. It's basically like everyone makes money when two stacks collide. So a lot of times the most profitable way to play a final table as a middle stack is to wait for those short stacks to collide. So certain times you may be like middle stack at a tournament and players are just going crazy. Let them go crazy. You know, they're basically torching money at that point. So yes, this is probably one of the parts of poker that is most unsolved, because it's almost impossible as a human being to like calculate ICM ranges, because it has to deal with how many players are left in the tournament. It also has to deal with the payout structure. So those things you can't kind of estimate in real time. But that being said, you can still like study ICM ranges. Like GTO Wizard has like everything from final table to 15% of the field left, 10% of the field left, 5% of the field left. So you can kind of see how your ranges will change. So next is basically a chart that shows you how ranges change with ICM. So this is a 15 big blind effective chip EV shove chart, and this is one when you're in the money. So if you see, they're shoving fours in the money chart, but they're shoving every pair in the chip EV chart. Chip EV, I don't even know if this is the correct chart. I pulled this off of Upswing Poker, but they're saying that you should shove ace-5 off for 15 big blinds in middle position. I don't really agree with that, but if you see like the ICM chart, shoves 4 pips tighter.
Is this around the bubble or is it in the money?
So this is in the money, and this is pure chip EV. So this is basically like your cash game, no ante chart. But yeah, this shows the shoving ranges are tighter, but what's even tighter is actually your calling ranges. There's certain spots where like you may not want to rejam ace king for 20 big blinds because there's a short stack. You may just want to call. You know, it seems weird, but it's actually like the most effective way to make money. I've personally been in, like, before I studied ICM, just like punted so hard, like where I was like final table bubble, first and second in chips, and we have like 100 big blinds each. Like you're never supposed to get in ace king for 100 big blinds as the 2 chip leaders on the bubble. It's probably something like queens plus or like kings plus, but there was like 4 other short stacks with less than 20 bigs. I got in 100 big blinds with ace king, lost to queens, and then I felt like shit.
Me too.
So this is actually a tournament yesterday I played. It's hard to see. So this is a $99 one rebuy, one add-on tournament on Global Poker. Their software is terribly outdated, as you can see. But this was the so this tournament, the stacks were super short. I was like sub 20 big blinds the whole tournament. But then I looked up and I was like, damn, I'm like final table bubble with like 9 big blinds. And then I look around, everyone else has like 5 big blinds. Wow. So this is a pretty fucked up ICM spot. If you see, this stack has 0.3 big blinds. This stack has 0.9 big blinds. This stack shoved 4 big blinds. This stack you can't see has 10 big blinds. So I'm basically third in chips with 7.3 big blinds. So like, I actually, if I'm playing a blind versus blind spot with the stack that's covering me, I want to play super tight. Like I want to just give him tons of walks and like limp aces, or maybe trap aces. Because if you look at the pay jumps, 7th is 2,600 and first is 15K. So it's just suicide for me to bust before these 2 stacks. Like I'm literally 2 spots is $1,700. So that's 17 buy-ins just by waiting for these 2 stacks to bust. So basically I'm affected the most because I, like me and this guy, we have like literally we have middling stacks with 7 big blinds, but literally just like kind of hell, you know. So the best strategy in this situation is to think about who you're shoving on. Like you don't want to shove into a big stack that's going to call you a little bit wider. and then not busting before these small stacks.
Are you on the button in that hand?
I'm on the button on this
I'm
hand.
just curious, how are you in the hand?
Oh, it just shows my hand. I'm not in the hand.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, this guy shoved. No,
I
I
was just curious how
no. This guy shoved and this guy called,
Okay.
and
That makes sense.
yeah, it was a pretty fucked up structure to see like the average
Yeah.
stack is.
Mhm.
Like I've never even seen it before, but it was a turbo. I just looked up and it looked like this, and I was confused. But then I like hunkered down from my other tables just to like focus on this table.
How did you do?
I got fourth, but I lost a flip for the chip lead basically for a 12 big blind chip lead, jacks to ace king. I'm not even sure if, for example, like if this guy had me covered and I was big blind, if he shoved on me, I would for sure fold ace king with these two stacks.
Yeah.
I'd probably call queens, because the value of me doubling is also not that high. It's not like I'm just gonna run away and like bust everyone. I still have the two stacks left of me that have like that can put me in the worst spots. Like these two guys both had over 10 big blinds. So yeah, basically when the stacks look like this, just like fold everything. Or if you don't be the person calling. Like if you can get a shove through, that's obviously very important, but like you just don't want to call it off very light. So this is kind of a quiz. I saw Victor do the quiz, so I figured it would be good. So button versus cutoff. Which hand would you prefer to 3-bet on 35 big blinds?
So you're the button.
You're the button. So you have the option to 3-bet.
Ace 5 suited.
Yeah, it's definitely ace 5 suited. Do you want to take a guess why it's ace 5 suited?
Because it's the suited ace, and then you get a lot of ace 7, ace 8, ace 9 to fold, just like you said.
Mm-hmm. And then the suited variety also has more playability if you're called. King 10 suited would be a little bit too strong to fold, but a little bit too weak to 3-bet. So I would just call King 10 suited. Ace 6 off is too weak to even play. Like solver hates ace 6 off. Ace 6 off is basically like one of the worst ace X you can have. Can't make a straight, or can't make a wheel. 7-8 suited would be a better hand to 3-bet during a cash game. That's because you have more implied odds if you make a big hand. You make a straight, you make a flush, you get paid a lot more. But 35 big's effective. Ace 5 suited is probably like, just remember like from a late position open, like ace X suited is basically the nuts. And then also hands that are good to rejam, like versus a button open, is like Jack 10 suited, Jack 9 suited, Queen 10 suited. These hands generally play pretty well if you're called. If you're called by nines, like Jack 10 suited is a flip. You want to think about your 3-bets based on what you can get to fold and what hands are going to call you. So if you can get better hands to fold with your 3-bet, especially dominating hands, it's a huge win. And then if you can get worse hands to call, then for your value, those are the best scenarios to be when you're value 3-betting.
I've seen some scenarios, also some videos where I think solver they discuss the difference between ace 5 suited and king 6 suited. Do you know the difference between the two?
I don't know the difference. I know the solver likes 3-betting both of those hands.
Yeah.
So there's like definitely like very small nuances that you have to figure out why the solver does what they want, because I've seen some sims where like button opens and like 25 big blinds from the big blind, you're only supposed, the worst king X suited hand is you're supposed to like rejam King 7 suited, but you're supposed to call King 8 suited. But I have no idea why it wants you to do that. But it could be like certain things on future runouts. So this might sound kind of weird, but like in certain scenarios, like 6s is a better rejam than 7s because they're going to call you with ace X. And the reason it's a better call is because when it runs out 4 to a straight, 6s beats ace X when it makes a 4-card straight. So there's small nuances like that you have to think about why it's a better, like why the solver wants those things. So like I'm not a solver guy, I just pulled this up for this presentation. But I do look at charts. I do know my like chip EV charts very well. I know my ICM charts relatively well. But I I don't run that many sims just because I don't have much time running a business. But yeah, this is just kind of the strategy I use. It works like it's worked pretty well. And like a lot of the 3-betting, you just don't want to blind 3-bet as well. Just because you see the chart say something doesn't mean you always want to 3-bet. A lot of times you want to build dynamics with players, and like those leveling boards where you 3-bet, 4-bet, light, that kind of thing, that happens over time through like playing with somebody for a long time, right? Like you 3-bet a guy 3 times in a row, you might want to 3-bet call ace jack suited in that spot because you know eventually he's just gonna fight back. You know, you want to 3-bet call lighter. I have players where I have like very strong dynamics with online, and they're 3-bet calling me 35 big blinds with like king queen suited, just because they know that I'm gonna rejam like queen 10 suited on them, that kind of stuff. But yeah, does anyone have questions on ICM or 3-betting?
So for the 6s and 7s hand, is it because like if the board comes, like say they have like ace 9,
Yeah,
and the board comes 2, 3, 4, 5,
yeah.
then you have that
6s will
like,
beat ace 9.
you beat the ace, the wheel draw there.
Yeah, but 7s doesn't
Sevens,
beat ace 9.
and even if they hit their ace, you have 2x regardless, right?
Yeah. So it's just like you have to look at all the scenarios and try to figure out like why the solver wants to do what they want to do. Yeah. I don't know if that was. I didn't time this presentation, so I don't know if it was too long or too short. Yeah. But does anyone have any other questions?
Oh, I assume this is kind of a stupid question, but obviously the range would change if you're like 35 big blinds effective or like 90 big blinds effective.
Yeah, it changes a lot. Yeah, definitely changes a lot.
What do you think those main like cutoff points are where it's like?
So you're definitely going to throw in some suited connectors when you're 90 effective.
Okay.
Yeah, because like you want board coverage. So if the board comes low, you can still cover that board. And then like the suited connectors play very well in 3-bet pots, just because your equity realization is going to be higher. You're going to be able to continue more on certain boards with those hands.
So usually after you 3-bet, so the problem usually comes after you 3-bet, right? Because sometimes, especially like when you're usually out of position and
Yeah.
after you 3-bet and you're kind of stealing, but then you don't know if you want to c-bet or what. Like, what kind of strategy do you implement there?
So you want to you want to construct your continuing range based on your actual like theory ranges.
Okay.
So say like you 3-bet small blind with like ace 5 suited, and it just comes like 8, 9. I don't know.
9 queen.
8, 9 queen. That's like a pretty tough one to continue on in my opinion, because there's no turn cards that are going to be good for you. B, their continuing range is going to be a lot of suited broadways. So they have queen jack suited, king queen suited, jack 10 suited, jack 9 suited, 9 10 suited. Like that smashes their calling range, but it doesn't. It's not necessarily good for your range. I typically like to like continue. For example, say it comes dry queen high and have ace king. I'm gonna take that ace king to the death with me because I block ace queen, I block king queen, I block aces and kings. And it's dry board. So I'm just gonna make you show me a queen.
Right.
You know, I'm gonna probably just bluff it off in that spot. So the drier hands that favor the overpair, the drier boards that favor overpairs, I kind of just like bet shove. But it depends like on who you're playing against. Like I said, there's people that have gotten into me with me in those situations, and they just flat aces because they know I'm gonna punt it off or something like that. But
So you have to be ready to just check fold after you.
you do
something.
check fold quite a few boards, I think, that are not good for your range. Even if you have aces and the board comes 7, 8, 9, like you're not thrilled about continuing with aces on that board. If you get raised, like it's pretty dicey. So yeah, it just depends on if the board that comes is good for your range or the continuous range. The more connected boards are kind of tough because like people tend to defend 3-bets with suited connected hands, especially a lot of like suited broadways. But here's another thing too. Late in these MTTs, the tournaments, you actually don't want to be defending 3-bets, defending versus 3-bets very often. It's either like a 4-bet or fold, just because it gets really dicey in those ICM situations, and you don't really want to be guessing per se.
Yeah, that's what I see when I see online, like, like there's these final table streams, right?
Yeah.
PG Millions or something. And they're like, none of them are calling, but then when I 3-bet these games, a lot of people are calling.
If you notice, they're playing like in certain scenarios like a lot tighter than you would expect to.
Right.
Like in the huge ICM jump spots. Like I remember I was playing, like I made the final table of the GG Millions like before it went to Ontario, and I had 30 big blinds on the button, and a guy opened. I flatted 10s on the button, 2 stacks with 8 big blinds. Small blind shoves 40 big blinds, and I just have to fold 10s there. Pay jumps are like 10K, so like it's just disaster for me to call there. Like he could just be shoving like king queen, like the ultimate like blocker hand, and I'm just flipping, and like everyone makes 10K if I bust, you know. So back in the day, during that time I didn't study ICM, but it just felt really wrong to call off with 10s there. You know, I'm just like, these two guys have like 7-8 big blinds, like every person that gets knocked out is over 10K, so it just doesn't make sense.
And how much of your stack are you prepared to commit to, like when you 3-bet, you're like, okay, well, maybe they put in 2 or 3 big blinds, you 3-bet. I'm guessing like 6 to 9 big blinds. So
general rule is the lower the effective stack size, the smaller you want to use to 3-bet. So it's even like 30 big blinds effective, 25 big. I can even 3-bet bluff with 25 big blinds. If cutoff raises the 2 big blinds, I'll make it 5 or 5.5.
Okay.
Generally in cash games, you want to go bigger with your sizing because you're deeper. So say I'm 100 big blinds effective, button opens at 2, I'll make it 10. I'll make it 8.5, 9, 10. But if you're under 40 big blinds effective, generally speaking, in position, you don't want to go over 6 big blinds. Out of position, I normally don't go over like 7, 7.5 big blinds because you're just committing too much of your stack. Like, you just want to use your stack to basically leverage their stack. So, like, say they have 25 big blinds, they make it 2, I make it 5.5 on the button. Like, they can't continue much, and their continuing is that they have to put in the rest of their stack. So you're just using small 3-bets to leverage their stack.
Yeah, like the thing I hate the most, or the most uncomfortable feeling I find is like when I'm in position and like, I 3-bet, get called, flop comes, nothing connects, and they lead out, right? Even though like I might be stuck, like I know in this hand, like say I have the ace-5, like you know you're sitting on ace high.
So like them leading out is like it's kind of a weird play. Like
you're assuming they connected in some way because they're leading out.
If they raised and I 3-bet and they called and they let out, then I would mark them as like a I mark them as a recreational player because you just don't have a lead range after you call a 3-bet because you're going against a much stronger range. So why would you ever lead? You know, and
I guess you face a jam then at that point when you're just like
and like that's just when you're playing like very non-GTO and you just want to play exploit as much as you can.
Okay. Yeah, because like my fear when you play like people who are maybe recreational players, that they could have anything.
To be honest, you just thank them for leading out because like you just saved yourself a C-bet. You know what I mean? Like.
Right. So you just fold usually in that situation. Or?
It depends. If I have overs and backdoors, I'm not folding.
Yeah. Okay.
It depends on their sizing too. If they lead pot, I can't continue. But if they lead small, I just raise. You know, I can have aces and kings. They can't. So, you know. Every situation is different. It's definitely not something you'll find the solver because the solver would never have that person lead after calling a 3-bet. But I know what you mean. Like you play live or you play at like World Series of Woodbine. There's like players that play very unconventional, and then you have to honestly you just they're playing face up against you, so you can't be too mad about it. Like they're it takes time to figure out their strategy, but they're not like balancing that lead range with like bluffs and. It's usually just weak showdown value.
Like when you show up to a new table, like do you purposely wait to see like what people do before you start really getting engaged, or if this situation is your first hand at a new table, do you still 3-bet, or do you go okay, well maybe I want to see who's good, who's not here?
So if my decision is like a mixed decision or like on the cusp, then I'll wait. But obviously, if it's like I also look at how people handle their chips in a live setting, like. If it's a young guy and he has a big stack and, he seems like he has a good open sizing. Because you can tell right away at a live setting based on someone's open sizing, whether they're recreational or not. But I generally just like play my hands, and like, you know, sometimes it's tough not to not stereotype people. But generally speaking, if like they fit a specific player profile, I'll give them the benefit of the doubt to be like on that specific player profile until they do something for me to like want to change my opinion.
Right. So do you get extra credit if you show up wearing like a GG poker hat?
Yeah.
To be honest,
I saw you had one, so I wanted
I
to
go
ask.
and I punt the first stack, and then I play tight after, and I scoop everybody.
I mean, from what I've seen, like when you play like recreational players, especially in like today's game, you just want to play kind of like tight aggressive for the first like half of the tournament. Once you hit ICM, then you want to open up your game and be a lot more aggressive. And like that's going to confuse players too, because they're going to see that you're playing tight in the beginning, and then all of a sudden you're opening like King 5 suited under the gun, and you know they're not going to know what to do. But I've been in like some high stake tournaments with like some huge crushers, and like on the bubble, some of them with 100 big blind stacks are opening any 2 cards from any position on the bubble. But that's like playing a term where people understand ICM.
Right.
But I was at Woodbine, and we were on the stone bubble of the main, and the button, who's a good professional, like one of my friends, he open shoves 18 big blinds, and the small blind guy was just like, man, you've shoved on me 3 times in a row, fuck it, I call. You know, he had king jack off and ended up holding, but like if he's calling king jack off, you probably shouldn't shove queen 10 off for 18 big blinds on the button. So it just depends on if that person respects ICM or not.
Yeah, fair.
Does anything change? Like I play a lot of the bounty hunters. Like and I was on a final table last night for like a bounty hunters tournament, and it was a spot where I had 10s, and 2 of the small stacks had jammed. Like one jammed, or one I think 3-bet to like 5 big blinds, and he had like 0.1 big blinds behind. The other guy jammed for like 8. I'm sitting there with 30, and I have 10s.
Oh, I'm fist bump jamming it in.
Okay, just because I also can get the bounties too.
Yeah,
on top of the money jump.
Yeah, because the isolation range is going to be super wide too, like a lot wider than you expect.
Okay.
I mean, there's also players that don't adjust, but like I'm pretty happy just to call off ace jack off there, ace 10 suited. You know. Depends on if you're at the final table. Final table, you have to consider ICM too, because there's pay jumps.
Yeah, I was, and the ICM pay jumps were bigger than like. I think each bounty was about 9 or 10 buy-ins, but then my pay jump was like 20 buy-ins.
Yeah, so you want to not play so loose for the bounties in that spot.
So would I fold 10s in that spot?
No.
Or just always go?
Yeah, I don't think I'm
Yeah,
folding
it's
10s in
pretty
a bounty. Yeah, I think I'm probably calling like pretty wide in a bounty. If they're a good player.
Yeah.
Like certain players are just going to rip in like ace 5 suited and like just like anything for piles of big blinds. Yeah.
Which bounty hunter was it? I was on the table last night too.
It was the $25 M something, I don't know, LOM.
Different one.
Yeah.
There's like 600 people, I was kind of hyped. Sun run.
How obviously live tell is super important. I played my first WSOPs this past month, and I could tell, like you were saying, you can really pick up a lot of information from people's opening ranges, their speed, their timing. How important is standardizing your timing, your bet sizing online and in person? Is there a difference?
Yeah, I mean, live obviously, like you can get away, or online you can get away with a little bit more, just because most people are multi-tabling. Live, I would say that if you have players that are good, then you definitely want to standardize your. I always standardize my opening sizes. If I do something non-standard, it's based on stack distribution, and it's also based on like, hey, now instead of min raising, I'm gonna split my range into a 3.5x and a min raise, and like I'm gonna do this with my 3.5x, do this with my min raise. But online, I think you can definitely get away with more for sure. But live, I definitely still like. I'll still like wait 10 seconds before I make a move. I also like to look at my cards when they come and not before, just because you don't want to have like a preconceived notion of what you're gonna do before you see what other players are gonna do. So if you look at your hands immediately, like say you have ace king, you're like it's gonna get in, but like then you have a raise, a 3-bet, a 4-bet in front of you, like you don't have that bias towards your hand already.
Right. That's a good point.
Any other questions?
no one else asks, I got a couple more. I've been playing a lot of tourneys lately online, just because I find that they're really great practice. What's your take on like max late regging a lot of these GG tourneys? Do you suggest showing up? Let's say for turbos and for non-turbos.
Yeah.
When would you sort of recommend getting in for max value?
So I would never max late reg a PKO if I could, because when you max late reg a PKO, a lot of the money has already left the prize pool. I would. So it's fine to max late reg. I max late reg all the time because table space, but you just have to understand when you max late reg, the variance is going to be higher. You may be able to produce like a very similar ROI, but your variance is going to be very high. Like you can just definitely just bust 10 times in a row within playing like five hands, you know. But I do max late reg quite a bit.
And if you're playing, let's say you want to go out and play like a standard, let's say like the Tuesday Classic 250 GG.
Yeah.
Would you say like get in 2 hours before, an hour before, 30 before?
Depends on your skill set, because say you play the 250 Thursday on GG, right? When you register from the start, there's gonna be 5 regs, like 1 or 2 fish. So if you don't mind battling like 200 big blinds deep, if you're good at cash games, if you're good at deep stack poker, then by all means go battle. You know what I mean? But I generally like to like register with 100 big blinds or less, and then a lot of tournaments 40 big blinds, and then the bottom of buy-in range I'll max late reg.
That's fair.
But I know people that are professional like max late reggers, and they seem to do okay.
8 bigs, 10 bigs, and they
Yeah.
split it up. Yeah.
Because
It's much
you just
easier to play that way.
you double up once and you wait a few orbits and you're already in the money.
Right.
So like some sites have huge issues with their structures like that.
I get the sense late regging, you're more likely to cash, but less likely to win.
That's not necessarily
Because
true,
you
I
have
would
less
say.
time to get a leading stack.
I would say it's
easier to get in the money.
not necessarily true, but you are missing value when you max late reg, because the weaker players in the tournament have already left, and then the people that are punting, like if you go play Woodbine like main event, like I would not suggest max late regging that, because there's just people punting like from the start, and like there's definitely people that can't sit there for 3 days, so they will not be there. Yeah. But generally speaking, I would say like playing online is the best way to practice. It's also the best way to get better, because you can see hands, and then you kind of like are able to produce a game plan a lot easier online by like those repetitions. Where when you get to a live setting, you just feel a lot more comfortable, I think. But I wouldn't suggest playing MPTs for a living, because variance is such a pain in the ass. You can have like a 50% ROI and lose like 30% of the time over like a couple thousand game sample. But I'm also that dumbass because I played online tournaments for a living. I still love it, you know. Like there's nothing better than waking up on Sunday and like having the whole schedule in front of you.
That's fair. One question I like to ask a lot of the guys that I started playing with who played for a long time is like, if you could go back to when you started, like 10 plus years ago, what would you have done differently? Like 2-3 things you would have done differently to maybe change the way you progressed? So
at a younger age, I definitely would have taken more shots. I was kind of like a bankroll nit for a while. I kind of still am, but a little bit less. I would say like my younger self would have put in more volume, because there was a time where people were playing way too passive in MTTs, and like you're just getting a variance free like first place a lot of times by just raising. But like nowadays when you play MTTs, like you're not like getting many raises through without resistance, and like people are like not even keen to fold flop with like king high anymore. So yeah, I think back in the day it was definitely easier. But I also noticed the trends in poker go back and forth, and like some of the stuff that people used to do is like coming back more, like the small size 3-bets, the leverage stacks, the mind games, the 4-bet click backs. They're coming back a little bit now. But yeah, I just think that you just have to like stay on top of like how the game's evolving and like what the trends are, and don't be afraid to play like super exploit strategy. It doesn't matter what the solver says most of the time. Yeah, cool. basically just like a brief intro on 3betting and ICM. But maybe one day I'll come and do something more in depth. But
Cool.
Yeah,
Thanks
thanks,
for watching. I
Yeah,
really
no
appreciate
worries.
it, man.